And we are back on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK. The ticket online at WTK.com. And we had to switch our Ticket TV screens, our channel, because, well, Sam hit a bad button. But we do have Brian Cook is with us. We got Seth Fisher with us. And we're going to continue this conversation with these guys now as we move forward. And I know you're going to talk basketball. I'm going to get to it in a moment, but I got to bring up this one. All these comments that are coming out from SEC Media Days, ACC Media Days, and everything. I feel like everybody is, rightfully so, I guess they're very self-serving, even if they try to claim that they're doing it for the greater good. But maybe my favorite one of all this now is Mark Stoops, the Kentucky football coach, said to Paul Feinbaum yesterday, I don't think when NIL was coming around that we thought this collective issue would become what it has. I can say that every coach I've talked to in the SEC is concerned about it. I'm guessing he's talked to like the Vanderbilt coach because he hasn't talked to the Kentucky basketball coach because the collective's going great for them. Like these comments kind of just crack me up.
Oh, I mean, the coaches are not happy about this because coaches want to have power over their teams. I mean, might as well go if you're going to go coach a bunch of professionals, go to the NBA or the NFL where the coach, you have to do whatever LeBron tells you to do. So that was always part of the allure for these guys. They're power mongers, right? And if players are now getting paid and have agents saying, I need them to do this, it's going to start affecting the way that they coach. So that's a problem for them. I'm sure that they are miserable about that. They never wanted to be the ones to have to pay players. They did it because they wanted to be competitive. But like there's the main problem. I mean, everyone's going to say whatever is good for them, right? Saban's going to want the old system. Texas A&M's going to want the new system. Everyone's going to ask for whatever system benefits them. The question should not be what benefits me. The question should be what is best for our sport. They have an amazing opportunity here to actually grow their sport, to do things for the fans, because the fans like to have access to the players and feel like they're part of the game. They have an opportunity to hold on to players that they've struggled to hold on to. Guys used to go to the NFL draft after 3 years, right? Like their best players leave them all the time. And the NFL doesn't use guys like that all the time. You have a tremendous opportunity here to lock in players to play in the bowl games. That's another problem that they've had, right? And now that you're going to be paying them, they have an opportunity to structure it nationally in a way that's going to benefit everybody. They don't have to worry about chasing everybody who's paying players because all that's gone now, right? All that effort that they were not expending to find out who's paying whom and get those teams in trouble or whatnot, that's all gone. You can now focus on creating creating a system. Maybe it's just having most of the money come in their fourth year, right? Like if you want to structure any deal that seniors get more than freshmen and you have to participate in the bowl game in order to get what such and such. They could they have an opportunity to control the market, especially if they could find a player group to work with, right? If the players organize into some sort of labor union, they have the opportunity to structure it how they want to make their game better. And in the process, make the lives of all these coaches easier because they're not going to have to be playing in this insane system where any moment someone else can just offer your player $1 million to leave.
Yeah, Jim Phillips from the ACC, he said, any new structure, the NCAA must serve the many, not a collect few. We are not the professional ranks, and he goes on and on. But, I mean, he's saying it because he's in preservation mode. And Nick Saban says it because he's in preservation mode to get back to where he wants. Like, you're right that they need to do it for the common good, but they're all going to vote
for it.
They're
not going to. There needs to be leadership who there needs to be leadership here. They need, and I don't care if they do it with the NCAA or not. Probably at this point, it's best to do it outside the NCAA. It's probably best for the major conferences to come together, or just the Big Ten and the SEC to come together and say, here's how we're going to do contracts. Here's how we're going to run this. And maybe create a league outside of the NCAA for football and basketball because, well, basketball is they have the tournament, but you don't need the NCAA for anything else. They don't do anything else.
All right, guys, let's shift the conversation to basketball. We do want to talk a little hoops here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTK. The ticket online at WTK.com with Brian Cook and Seth Fisher from the MGoBlog Roundtable. So please tell me, when we're talking about Big Ten basketball, why I should not be listening to everybody that is falling in love with Indiana basketball.
I mean, they got to piece together a whole lot of different pieces right now. So you always kind of wonder what's going to happen when you have a team that has so much turnover. But I mean, they do have Trace Jackson Davis back. Like, they did bring in a couple of interesting freshmen, but it does feel like I wasn't aware that people were real high on Indiana.
Oh, I saw a headline today. Like the headline today was like Indiana, Mike Woodson with a great offseason has Indiana ready for whatever. That was the headline I saw from somewhere today. It was this morning. And I've seen a lot of love, like a lot of places having Indiana in the top 1, 2, or 3 in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying that they don't have Trace Jackson Davis, but your point, Brian, to me is what I've been thinking about, which is putting it all together. Mike Woodson hasn't proven yet that he can put it all together, has he?
Well, I mean, he comes in last year and they're not really in good shape, Indiana, and he has a season with them that's fairly decent. So I think there's some potential there. I mean, I think their problem is like, what are they going to get out of Xavier Johnson? Like, he transferred from Pitt. He's taken a super senior year, I believe, and last year he was a better shooter from three than he ever been in his career, but he was very wild. So he gave Michigan the business. But when he ran up against teams that were able to stay in front of him, he often just put up garbage. And they're going to be playing two non-shooters almost all the time because Jackson Davis and Race Thompson play next to each other. Johnson himself is a guy who only got up about 100 threes last year, so he's not like a volume shooter. And I have questions about what that fifth spot is going to look like. They have Trey Galloway, they have Tamar Bates, who was decent last year. They have Geronimo, who was hurt a lot, but their bench doesn't really look that great to me. And Miller Kopp's a pretty one-dimensional small forward, so they're really going to be a lot like they were last year, except they're a year older, which does help. But when you're a year older and guys are going from juniors to seniors, it's less of a bump than you get from freshmen to sophomores. So I kind of feel like they'll be a good team. I don't really see them competing for the Big Ten title.
Seth.
Yeah, I'm in agreeing with Brian. I kind of always thought it was going to be an Illinois-Michigan battle this year. In Indiana, I mean, yeah, sure, they could be the third because like a lot of Big Ten teams lost so much this year, right? And also, I mean, Trace Jackson Davis is center, and I think the centers are going to eat this year because the centers have been so good in this league, and they lost so many good, and they lost a bunch of good ones. So like those who got to keep them, I mean, and that's Illinois' problem is they really don't have that kind of power in the center that they had before. Otherwise, they'd be a complete team. And Michigan, I mean, we all talked about them. They're the X factor, right? Like, can they get the jump out of Kobe Buffkin? Can they survive with three guards? Will it work, right? But I kind of right now, if I had to guess, it'd be Illinois, Michigan, Indiana as the top three. Michigan State, they're replacing a lot. Like they're maybe a dark horse. I never
They're
count
not
out.
really replacing a lot. They just kind of let some guys go and then didn't recruit anybody. I think they're entering the season with 9 scholarship players, and I think it's kind of telling that Michigan's like, all right, we're going to go to Lebanon to fill out our roster, and Michigan State's like, yeah, we got 4 open chairs, it's fine. So I mean, they need a lot of things to go right, and it just kind of feels like they'll be a decent team, but they're looking at more of an 8 seed than competing for the title. Illinois I mean, their roster is going to be really weird for anybody who's watched them over the past few years because they don't really. I mean, they brought in Matt Meyer from
Baylor, yeah.
From Baylor, but that guy's a beanpole. He's more of a small forward than a center. And then Coleman Hawkins is their only guy of significance who's over 6'7". So unless I'm missing a transfer or a freshman up and comer,
I mean, Shannon's gonna be a impact guy there.
yeah, but he's a wing, right? So like,
Right.
I don't really see necessarily see a center on their roster.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean that's the everything but right. I think they're built beautifully, but losing Kofi and not replacing him has really damaged them. But like last year they didn't. They had Omar Payne was their backup center.
Yeah.
They don't even have that this year. So I mean that's where you're going to get them.
They have a 7-footer who's barely played, and they have a 6'9", 270-pound sophomore who's also barely played. So they do have a couple of guys, but I don't even know if these guys are on scholarship.
It's a really weird year in the Big Ten because of how much turnover, right? There's a lot of high-level turnover when you see, Johnny Davis from Wisconsin. So you have a lot of question marks about Wisconsin. They're usually competing, but we have no idea. We talked about Kofi leaving, and that leaves a big hole in the middle. Purdue generally competes in the Big Ten, but Jaden Ivey leaving is obviously a huge loss. But they generally bring in someone else to take, to step up, and they're usually competing at the top 4, top 6 in the league. Keegan Murray leaves Iowa. They never play defense, but they expect his brother to step up and have a really good season and maybe elevate, to keep them towards the top half of the league. There's just a lot of turnover in the Big Ten this year. And Seth, you mentioned it in particular in the size. There's a ton of turnover in size, but just in general, there's a lot of star power turnover in the Big Ten from last year to this year.
Yeah, I mean, if Purdue can find a point guard, I think that they're going to be pretty good. I mean, Zach Edey's back, and you've got Caleb First, who's 6'10", stretch 4. Gillis is a good glue guy, and they have shooters. They have Ethan Morton. They brought in Fletcher Lawyer, who's about 6 feet taller than his brother. They have Brandon Newman back. They have a lot of guys, but it's like, yeah, they lost Jaden Ivey, and now it's like, how are they going to generate shots? They brought in a super senior transfer from Utah who only played about 20 minutes in the Pac-12 last year, and he's like their best bet at a point, and I'm just pretty skeptical of that. Arguing the other way is that this is a Matt Painter team, right? So Matt Painter teams historically get a lot of shots off action. So maybe they can paper over that and just be huge and shoot a bunch of threes and beat Purdue.
They lost Trevion Williams too, though, didn't they?
Yes, they lost Trevion Williams, but they do bring back Zach Edey. So
yeah, but I mean,
anybody, you can weather losing Trevion Williams when you have a 7'4" guy who can eat up a bunch of those minutes.
Yes, but Edey tends to pick up fouls. Well, and I mean, he's never played.
Who's the next guy? I mean, come on. We just assumed that Matt Painter went to his garden. He had been watering the plants for the really tall guys, and he's going to have another 7'2" guy on the bench this year.
And one thing that bigs do as they get older is they get better about fouls, except for Mo Wagner. But in general, young bigs commit a lot of fouls, and older bigs get much better at that. So, I think you can't discount not Iowa, Purdue too much. I mean, I don't really necessarily think that there's a clear favorite in the league. It does look like the league is going to take a step back. And then, I mean, if you look at what the opposition is at center, it looks like this is going to be a chance for Hunter Dickinson to eat, because a lot of the guys who gave Dickinson trouble are no longer around. Like Marcus Bingham's not around, Kofi Coburn's not around. Like if Michigan hadn't lost Frankie Collins, I'd be pretty intrigued about what's going on here. But yeah, so you've Hunter Dickinson, and he's probably going to be more of a shooter this year. He's probably going to refine himself a little bit, and it doesn't look like the league has nearly as much size as it used to. So
the latest Joe Lunardi bracketology, I only bring it up because, I mean, it's too early for any of this stuff, but he has Indiana as a 4 seed as the AQ from the Big Ten. Kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking at, what people are looking at the Big Ten going into the season.
Yeah, it looks like a definite step back in terms of overall conference quality. It doesn't really look like there's a potential 1 seed in the conference.
Yeah, there's 4s, 5s, 6s. Michigan, he has like as a 7. Michigan was which is really weird though, because Michigan was a 4. Oh, because he must have had both Caleb and Musa coming back or something. Because they were a 4 and the AQ like a month and a half or 2 months ago, and now they're a 7 and they're not the AQ.
There were a lot of projections that were based on the idea that both Musa and Caleb Houston would come back, and those turned out to not be accurate.
They weren't paying very close attention. All right, guys, we have a couple minutes left before we wrap up. I did want to get your thoughts, Brian, on the there's still a little bit of uncertainty around the hockey program, but the non-conference schedule came out.
Yeah.
You for a series, Harvard for a series, the home and home with Western. Seems like a pretty good non-conference schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is that they're not leaving Michigan for any of it, but
Yeah.
Dropping the GLI, I think, was just necessary, right? Because they have 8 guys in the World Juniors camp that's going on right now. Probably 6 of those guys will be at the World Juniors, and when it was 2 or 3 guys, it was tolerable to play a couple of games where you didn't have your best
Yeah, but
roster
2
available.
lines and 2 pairs of defensemen, or a pair
Right?
of
Yeah,
defensemen,
it's
right? That's
just
insane.
like, yeah, it's insane, and it's just not tenable anymore. So it's, and since it was just going to be on campuses or whatever, it's time to let that go. But yeah, it's fun to see BU. It's fun to have that home and home against Western, because Lawson is a great arena to visit. And after what happened last year, I'm sure that there will be some hype for that series. They were a 1 seed last year, and they have a lot of those guys back, and I'll be interested to see how they are this year. And I feel like it's a good balance. I just don't know about, like, they're playing Longwood to open the season. I'm just like,
I looked at that, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I looked at it having the old conversation I used to have with Red about, because the Ivy League still dictates when practices can really start for full team. And so they have the exhibition game against Windsor, and then they have that Lindenwood series before before they play BU. And like, to me, it's almost like you schedule that so you have an extra 2 weeks of practice before BU. You're not concerning yourself with the games. You want to make sure that your team is ready for when the competition really steps up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing, is that this is going to be like Lindenwood's first series in Division 1. They were a club team last year, and
that's what I'm saying. I think it's purely just to have practice time.
I mean,
that's why you do it, because you
maybe
can't practice much before October 1st as a full team.
And
they're going to get better practice against the development team than they will against Lindenwood.
Well, they changed the RPI so that you can't get punished for a win. So in terms of just like gaming the system to make your numbers look pretty, it's not going to hurt Michigan like it would in the old days. So it's not really a negative, but I like those games. Like, find who you think the best team in Atlantic hockey is going to be and play them. And try not to lose to them, unlike Ohio State last year, which kept them out of the tournament.
So I looked at it as they're gearing up for BU, right? So and it's not even about who they're playing as much as you get more practice time Monday through Friday that you wouldn't get.
Yeah, and
you don't get necessarily prior to the season. It's because hockey is so weird, because you can't practice as a full team until like the week before the season starts. It's the only sport in, I think, all of NCAA that you don't have like a build-up. How long does basketball practice for? Football gets a month, right? Hockey gets like a week.
Basketball starts over a month ahead of time. They start in like mid-September.
Yeah, they get like over a month. They get well over a month. Football gets a month. Hockey gets like a week.
Michigan's doing the international tour this year, so they get like 10 extra practices too. Yeah,
I love that international trip. And this is probably a good way to wrap up the conversation back to basketball. I think it's a great year to have it. You're putting all these parts together, brings your team closer together. I think it's a great opportunity for them to have in July, that you get this experience that you wouldn't if you had it, another year. It doesn't, you can do it once every 4 years. It seems like pretty good timing for Juwan's team with the way this team needs to come together with no more Eli, right? You're bringing in some new leadership and that kind of thing.
Yeah, especially because you don't really know exactly what's going to happen at point guard. Like, is Llewellyn going to be enough of a point guard that he's a point and not a combo? What are you going to get out of Kobe Buffkin this year? Like, where's Jet going to play? Like, what spot can he play the two realistically, or is that a pipe dream? Like, and what is Yusuf Hayat going to be able to bring? Like, I think that there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's good for Michigan that they're going to be able to take a little bit more time to put them together.
And Greece is pretty. So is France. Hopefully the wildfires calm down and don't impact them, because they're having an issue over in Europe with that as well. We saw that. But then
France that time of year is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. But I think too, on the long-term scale, Michigan needs something to offer other than what every other program offers. And this is one of those few things that, like, if you're interested in going to a school and one of them has an opportunity to go see Greece in France and another one doesn't, like, that I think actually matters. So I love that Michigan does this, and I hope that they recruit off of it.
Guys, appreciate your time as always. It's been a lot of fun, this very weird 2-part edition of the MGoBlog Roundtable, because we're on 2 different YouTube videos now. And but appreciate your time as always. We're going to, of course, be back here on the air tomorrow for the show tomorrow. Of course, it's Friday, so we'll have John U. Bacon join us. But thanks to the MGoBlog Roundtable guys. Thanks to the Top Dog and Tim McCormick. Great conversation he and Sam had earlier this morning as well. You've been listening to the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050.